In this book, Men and Women of Science, it was, well, it was written in 1989, and this book was printed in 1992. So there's about a 3-year gap, not the most up-to-date. But I mean, also, it's 2018, so of course, it's many years ago, 30 years ago. But Mr. Hawking just happens to be in here. He's the very last one. If you can see him right there. And then boom, it goes to the index. So I think it's fantastic that he's in here. I'll read this out and some thoughts on it. Stephen William Hawking, 1942-2018. That's also pretty cool. It doesn't have a year for him, passing away. Looks like I can write that in with a pen now. Is a British theoretical physicist. Because of his work in the field of gravity, Hawking is considered perhaps the most brilliant theoretical physicist working today. Hawking's best-known work is on the nature of black holes, a phenomenon suggested by Einstein's equations describing what might happen should a huge star die, proposing it would crush into its own center with such strong gravitational force that nothing could escape, not even light. Introducing his own theoretical modifications, Hawking posits the existence of many black holes. Created by the tremendous force of the Big Bang, these many black holes would not only emit subatomic particles and radiation, now called Hawking radiation, but would gradually evaporate over the space of 10 to the 66 years. That's 10 with 66 zeros behind it. Or 65. Only to explode with the energy of millions of hydrogen bombs. At the same time, Hawking is the first to admit that there is, as yet, no physical evidence that black holes actually exist. Hawking is one of a number of scientists concerned with theories linking quantum mechanics and gravitation. The premise of these so-called grand unified theories is that it is scientifically possible to prove how the universe came into being. And a few words on Mr. Hawking. He lived one hell of a life, and it's pretty wild that I believe he's the longest survivor with the condition of ALS to date. He had it for like a good 50 plus years, I believe. It was an early onset of ALS, and I can't imagine what it was like living in a prison like that. Your body not being able to move, next to impossible to communicate. I remember there was a story about him he could just twitch his eye to control a board to pick out letters to make full sentences out of, and then the computer would make a computer voice and relay what he was trying to communicate. To think, people complain about things in work, things in life, relationship problems. Dude, this guy was in a fucking wheelchair and couldn't even, talk. And he still was, writing books. People have nothing to complain about, man. Compared to that's admirable in my eyes. And as well, I can't help but to throw this out there. It says here, proposing what might happen should a huge star die. It's unfortunate that I could have never been able to get through to this person and tell him about what I'm developing. Again, it's one of those things, it's like, well, Jeff, you got to realize that, some things are just too out there for people. And no matter how hard you try, you're just not going to get through to them. But I'll never know with Mr. Hawking. I'll never know if I could have just walked up to him and said, hey, well, this is what I think happens when a huge star dies. It radiates the energy away, it loses mass, and the material that it's composed of, the heavy material, sinks to the center, and basically when a huge star dies, it becomes a planet. meaning black holes cannot form, because there's nothing to allow the mass not to be lost. There's nothing to prevent the light from escaping. The light will always escape. The mass will always escape. But these days, black holes are a real thing, and they were never supposed to be real, even from Hawking standards. They were always theoretical entities. And I don't know, I guess groupthink took over and made them real, and it's like trying to fight a shadow. You can't fight a shadow. Trying to debunk black holes, it's never going to work. I tried to tell Mr. Crothers that, but I don't know, he just doesn't want to listen. You can't rail against something that isn't real, because you're never going to win. Black holes aren't a physical thing to argue against. It's a social phenomenon, more or less. And even the guy that was working on them the most knew that it was theoretical, that they might not actually exist. Unfortunately, a lot of scientists and people in the media and a lot of colleges still teach that they actually are here. But that being said, I want to think about Mr. Hawking as the kind of guy who could think about what was possible and try to, figure things out, even though his body was, completely fucked. But his mind wasn't. His mind was all there. And just look at him as a good example for your own life. Just remember that there are a lot of things that we have at our disposal that we, just sort of forget that we have, that are very powerful, like our ability to use our fingers, shit like that. Alright, you guys, I think I made this talk long enough. Later.